Hey, AP World. Welcome in. Happy Thursday night. We are back again for another amazing race, Unit 8. I'm excited. That means we only have one more unit left. So everybody keeping up with your work and studying? I hope so. Drop a comment in the chat. Let me know that you are here, because tonight I'm giving extra credit for everybody who's joined us. So I want to make sure that I've got you in here. You can drop your name in the chat, or you can send me a message on Teams, either one. Hey, Coffee Chinchilla, welcome in. Welcome in. All right, so the link that you all need is in the description below. I'm also going to put it in the chat for you. Hey, Divya. Hey, Tabena. Good to see you guys. I've missed you guys all week. I hope you're having a good week. Testing is officially over. So glad about that. Hey, Damien. Hey, Casey. Welcome in. All right, guys. So tonight we are going to be looking at Unit 8, and we're going to be looking at a DBQ. Before we do that, though, I want to talk to you real quick about your assignment for the amazing race. Hey, Dami. Welcome in. Hey, Megan. I'm good. I'm good. How are you? I'm missing you guys this week. It's more fun to teach than it is to test, that's for sure. All right, so your amazing race link, yeah, that's fine, Casey, that's fine. Your amazing race link is right here in the description below. I also dropped it in the chat for you. It's just like all the other ones. You're watching the Period 8 video to take notes and kind of recap on what happens in Period 8. And then the practice DBQ, that's what we're going to talk about tonight, and writing the context for Unit 8. And then you have flashcards, timeline, and events, knowing different events. That's all the extra credit part, okay? Hey, guys, welcome in. Hey, Sahir. Hey, Kai, how's it going? Welcome in. Good to see you guys. So that is your assignment that will be due next week. And then tonight, what we're going to be doing is going over DBQ. Keep in mind, you're not going to be able to, what am I trying to say? Write on your DBQ. So, normally when you take it on paper, you can have, you can make a, write on the copy and like annotate it. You're not going to be able to do that. So you want to have a piece of paper beside your test, scrap piece of paper, that you can put this on. Okay. It doesn't have to be printed out like this. It's totally fine if it's not. You can just make a little chart. That's cool. Yasmin, hey, how's it going? Hey, T, welcome. Hey, it's Tommy C3. You guys have to check out Tommy's channel. He is my best friend growing up. It's her oldest son, and he's one of the coolest kids I know. I mean, who would just join in an AP World Live? This kid, he's awesome. So check out his channel. He's got some funny stuff to talk about. Although, Tommy, I was a little bummed when you gave a tour of your new room, and all you did was show us your toys. I was like, I want to see your room. Tommy and his family just moved into a new house, and he was showing me like his game setup and all this stuff. I suppose you gotta meet your fans where they are, right, Tommy? They probably don't care about seeing your room, but I wanted to see the room, dang it. Anyways, good to see you, Tommy. Hey, Sarah, welcome in. Fardine, which link do you need? They're all in the comments below in the description. But let's see. I can throw them in the chat too. This one is for the amazing race. And this one is for the DBQ. So remember, like I said before, you don't have to have this exact layout. The important part is that you take notes on your documents as you're doing your test. All right, so we're going to start looking at this. The DBQ link, if you want to look at that, you can look at it on my screen, or it's also right here for you. That's the one we're going to be going over tonight. Now, this one is from an old exam. So the wording of the question is different. It's based on what it used to be worded like. So what I did is I changed it. So your new prompt, I sent it to you on Remind as well, but I'm going to put it in the chat as well so that you guys know. This will be the new prompt. To what extent was industrialization in Japan and Russia similar and different? Spell similar. There we go. Between the years 1850 to 1914. So that's the prompt we're going to roll with. Oh, you want me to send it on Teams, Casey? Oh, okay. Hold on just a second. I misunderstood your question. I thought you were talking about, I don't even know. It's been a long week of testing. Oh my goodness. I'm so tired. All right, I'll send it to you on Teams. Just give me a second here. Casey's on her iPad. That's exciting. It lets me into Teams. Is it going to let me into Teams? Yeah, there we go. Hey, Adam, I see your message. That sounds good. All right, Casey, I'm sending you the links to the things. Links to the things. Anybody else need it through Teams? If you can't access it on YouTube, just let me know. Let me know. Let me know. After May 20th, we're all gonna chill, Freddie. Like I got some fun stuff planned. I'm excited about after May 20th. I don't know. I don't think that DBQ download is going to work, Casey. Just get the DBQ off of the Amazing Race if you need it. I need to send you the organizer. That's what I need to do. And if you want to practice doing the organizer on paper tonight instead of typing it, I'm cool with that. Just do it on paper, and then you can send me a picture of it so that I know that you did it. Okay, so if you want to practice on paper, I'm cool with that. What you're going to want to do is just make a chart that looks similar to this. Hold on, let me get this one. It looks similar to this. This is what you want for each one of your documents. Document 1, you want to write describes, you want to write support, and you want to write explain. Ellie, I saw your message. That's cool. I got you, girl. All right, and let's see what else. We got Sarah. If I could have the links too, that'd be great. All right, Sarah, hold on just a sec. Anybody else need the links? Speak now or forever hold your peace, because I'm not going to keep sending you. Let's see, Sarah, here they come. Anybody else need them? Let me know. Let me know. There you go, Sarah. Eva says, will we take the practice exam? Yes, we're going to be doing that next week. And actually, if you want to do it before then, I'm fine with that. Dami, I don't know your real name. Let's see. Let me see if you sent me a message on Teams. Oh, dang it. I just got out of Teams. Just give me a second. Yeah, so Divya, if you want to do it over the weekend, if you have time, that's fine. Or we're going to be doing it next week as well. The thing is, I don't know that it gives you the full 4 hours. Whoever Dami is, let me know on Teams so I know who you are. Unit 8 is not the last unit. We have Unit 9 yet. Yes, it's good to see everybody here. Oh, okay, Tosin, I got you. I just sent it to you on Teams. It's always fun to have more people. We like having lots of participation. That extra credit, you know what I'm saying? Does it every time. I should have been given extra credit this whole time. Y'all would have been showing up. All right. All right. So, hey Simone, how's it going? Good to see you. Okay, let's get started. I have the new prompt right here. This is supposed to be 2 with 1 O. I don't know. My computer's been doing this weird thing lately that when I press O, it gives it double. It's really weird. And it's also been putting in periods where it doesn't even need a period. What's up with that? You know, it's crazy. Anyway, that should be TO, not TOO. To what extent was industrialization in Japan and Russia similar and different? That should be different, not difference. I think I was talking when I was typing. Between the years of 1850 and 1914. See, it put that period in there. Isn't that weird? I'm going to have to ask one of our computer gurus how to fix that. All right, so we're looking for similarities and differences. Hey, Noemi, welcome in. And that's what you're going to be looking for in the documents. So you might want to just jot yourself a quick note. I'm looking for similarities and differences. Once again, with what I've got on the screen right here, if you want to do it on a piece of paper and practice it right now, that's how you're going to have to do it on the actual test. Totally fine with me. You can totally do that. Hey, Perry. All right, so let's look at document number 1. Let's get going. Document number 1 is by Sergey Witt. Let's see if I can zoom up on this a little bit more. He is a Russian finance minister, and it's a secret letter to Tsar Nicholas II, 1899. So we know he's writing to the king or the czar, so we could probably do audience. What I would do over here on your DBQ organizer, just make a little note. That's not even the one I want. Hold on. Make a little note under document 1, audience. That way we know that we could potentially do audience. And then it says, the entire economic structure of the empire has been transformed in the course of the second half of the current century, so that now the market and its price structure represent the collective interest of all private enterprises, which constitute our national economy. So we're looking for similarities and differences with industrialization, and that's what he's talking about, right? He's talking about private enterprises and the national economy and how that all plays a part. Buying and selling and wage labor penetrate now into much deeper layers of our national existence than was the case of the time of the serf economy. Remember, the Russians had a serf system where the serfs pretty much were the laborers. And then as they industrialize, that's going to go further away. It'll still be present in the agricultural economy a little bit, but the serf system wouldn't be as important. Yes, serfdom, that's right. Okay, Samang, that's fine. Do you want me to send you the document, the Amazing Race document link on Teams? Let me know if you want it. Fardine, I do not have Unit 9 done yet. I'll work on it this weekend. I got Unit 8 done right before this live. It's crazy. But you know, it's been a crazy week, but I'll work on number 9. Okay. So that's what he's talking about there. And basically that switch happens because of industrialization. He says, I realized, of course, that there were very weighty arguments against the protectionist system and against high tariffs. But I suppose that even the proponents of free trade must be aware that it would be extremely harmful from the government viewpoint to remove the protective system, because those industries had been securely established for whose creation whole generations had paid by a high tariff. So a high tariff is going to be a high tax on things coming into the country, or a high tax in general. The gradual growth of industry in the country, always accompanied by falling prices for manufactured goods, will make it possible for our export trade to deal not only in raw materials as of the present, but also industrial goods. So he's saying we want to be able to export our industrial goods that we make. Our present losses in the European trade can then be converted into profits in the Asiatic trade. Where are they going to export? They want to export to Asia. The influx of foreign capital is, in my considered opinion, the sole means by which our industry can speedily furnish our country with abundant and cheap goods. So how are they going to be able to get this manufacture cost down? By having foreign capital come in and pay for the industrialization. That's what he's saying there. Each new wave of capital swept in from abroad knocks down the high level of profits in which our monopolistic entrepreneurs are accustomed and forces them to seek compensation in technical improvements, which in turn will lead to price reductions. So he's saying these improvements will eventually lead to price reductions. Then we can export more and make more money. If we carry our commercial and industrial system begun in the reign of Alexander III consistently to the end, then Russia will at last come of age economically. Then her prosperity, her trade, and finance will be based on two reliable pillars, agriculture and industry, and the relation between them, profitable to both, will be the chief motive to power our economy. So this letter is to the Tsar. That tells you that it's before the Russian Revolution because the Tsar is still in power. If you look at the date, it's 1899. So this is even before World War I takes place. So they're industrializing during that time. And he's saying we need to let foreign investors come in. All right. So how would we describe this? What would you say to describe this document? Drop it in the chat. Let me know. Remember, describing is just like telling me the main idea. Okay, so this is a letter to the Tsar, but probably the Tsar is supportive of it, right? And if not, then the finance minister is trying to get him to be supportive of it by saying, hey, this is going to really help our country in the long run, right? So maybe this doesn't really look persuasive. It doesn't look like he's really trying to talk the Tsar into supporting it, but maybe that the Tsar already supports it and this is kind of like an update. That could be. Anybody else have thoughts on that? The influence of foreign capitalism will help improve the economy. Okay. So this is the opinion of the finance minister. He wants Russia to be able to export more. And foreign capital will let them do that. Maybe something like that for your description. Megan says, middle class is one of the Tsar to allow foreign investors to assist with industrialization. I like it. Sergey White is writing a letter telling the Tsar about foreign capital in the economy. Yeah, and the benefits of it. Divya, add in that there are benefits in allowing foreign capital. All those are good. Now, that's your description. The supports part might be a little bit harder to find out, but what you're going to do for that supports part, you're going to try to figure out what you could argue with this document. So could we argue that Russia wants to industrialize and supports it? Yes. How do they want to do it with foreign investment? Is there anything else that we might be able to argue with this document? Like, what could we prove with this document? That's what we're looking for. So we know that it supports the fact that Russia wants to industrialize. And they want to do it with foreign investment. Anything else that stood out to you? The Tsar is the one in charge of industrialization. Yeah, they need the Tsar's support, right? Now, at this point, you're just trying to figure out, okay, what could I argue with this document so that later you can go back and group them, okay? Let's see. Tabena says they want to place high taxes to improve and create more industries. Okay, let's look at what he said about the taxes, because I think, was he saying that they need more high taxes, or that, let's see. I realized, of course, that there were very weighty arguments against the protectionist system. I'm not really sure what protectionist system is, but he puts that with the high tariffs, so it's probably something to do with that, right? But I suppose that even the proponents of free trade must be aware that it would be extremely harmful from the government viewpoint to remove protective industries had securely established for those creation. The whole generation had paid by a high tariff. So the tariffs, it looks like the tariffs are like keeping free trade and industry down, maybe. So I think that maybe he I don't know that he wants to place high taxes, but maybe I'm reading it wrong. You could be right, Tabenna. What do you guys think about that? Let's see. Devia says the last paragraph has a lot of proof about making Russia come to the levels of other countries economically. Yeah. So this could be like the benefits of it, right? You could maybe use that to say that if they allow foreign investments, this is what it's going to be. That's probably what I would focus on most, since that tax part is kind of confusing. I don't really understand like where he's going with that. I think he's basically saying that like the high tariffs were keeping them from truly industrializing, but I'm not positive that I'm reading it right. So if you get yourself in that situation where you're like, I don't really know if that's what he means, then just don't include that part in your argument. Use a different part of the document, like what Devia pointed out down here. You could use this part in conjunction with the foreign investments. Let's see. Benefit of foreign influence, definitely. According to document 1, foreign influence will help speed up the economic growth through agriculture and industry and convert the losses from Europe into profits in Asian trade. That's great, Pari, for describing the document. Then pull something from the document to prove that, right? So you could say, let's see. You could say, for example, the document supports this by saying that with the improvement of industrialization from the capital or from the foreign capital, there will be more goods that Russia can manufacture and therefore sell them on the Asian market or something like that. And you'd be pulling this part right here, this sentence. You could also, to support it, pull some of this down here, and you could say, according to the author, if Russia accomplishes this, then their economy will prosper, and both agriculture and industry will do well and be profitable. And that would be pulling something down here, like what Tosin suggested. Casey says, protectionism, protecting domestic industries against foreign competition. Oh, that makes sense. Okay. See, the problem is you won't have a dictionary to look that up. But that makes a lot more sense now, because he's saying right here that there were weighty arguments against protecting the country against foreign competition and high tariffs. So that makes sense. But I suppose that even the proponents of free trade must be aware that would be extremely harmful from the government's viewpoint. So Tabenna, you were right. You were reading it right. He wants to have high tariffs so that it will restrict foreign imports, and then have the foreign capital help them make cheaper goods. So that's what he's talking about there. Thank you, Casey. I appreciate that. Megan says the finance minister declares that foreign capital is the only way to quickly industrialize and improve the Russian economy. This might prove a difference from Japan and supports what Perry says. Yeah, so that's a possibility. That could be something that you could argue, depending on what other documents we have, right? Yasmin says foreign influence can hold up economic growth. For example, document 1 explains how foreign capital can be profitable. Yeah, that's a possibility too. So what you're doing here when you're first looking at these documents is you're just going to write down quick notes of different things that you could argue with the document, because that's what you're going to try to use to group them together. Okay? Let's go to the next one. Document 2. This one is coming from Count Okuma, former Prime Minister of Japan, and it's the Industrial Revolution in Japan. It's an article published in the United States Magazine, 1900. So we know the audience, right? We also might be able to do point of view on that one, so I'm going to put that as a possibility. Audience and possibly point of view. I'm just going to make a quick note to myself so that when I go back later, I remember what I could possibly do with this one. So it says one of the principal measures adopted by the Meiji government with the object of promoting the national prosperity and enlightenment was the education of the young as well as of grown men, some of whom held high government positions. These latter were made to travel through civilized countries for the purpose of observing and examining their social, industrial, and political institutions with a view to transplanting to Japanese soil whatever seemed them likely to bear fruit there. So they went around to look at how other nations were doing it. Another measure which the government steadily pursued was the establishment of various kinds of factories under the direct supervision and management of its officials. So the government is supporting industrialization. That could work with a similarity possibly, because in Russia, the government was also supporting industrialization. In the School of Mechanical Engineering, a small iron foundry was built, and machines were made for the purpose of practical instruction. The Department of the Army started the manufacture of gunpowder and implements of war, while the Department of the Navy built and equipped a dockyard. So there he's describing all the manufacturing. We're going to go to the next paragraph because you got to read these fast. The government was also encouraged the introduction of the machinery for reeling silk thread and spinning cotton yarn, both of which operations had formerly been done almost wholly by manual labor. So they're industrializing with machinery as well. The government succeeded in concentrating the capital until now scattered by issuing bank regulations and establishing national banks. For the purpose of facilitating foreign trade, it used its influence for the establishment of the Bank of Yokohama. Again, the government undertook the construction of the first railway in Japan. So is Japan using foreign capital? No, they're making their own banks, right? So this could almost be like a similarity and a difference, right? This talks about how Japan's government supports industrialization, and it also, so that could be a similarity with the first document because Russia supported it, but it talks about how Japan paid for industrialization itself with domestic funds. So no foreign capital. That could be a difference. Remember, we're looking for two similarities, one difference, or two differences and one similarity. Now, to describe this document, you might say something like Japan industrialized factories, and then give examples such as the cotton industry and silk industry. Is there anything else that we could use to describe this? You could say that they made different departments that would be under direct supervision of government officials regarding industry. Those are just some quick notes. And then this part right here are things that you can support an argument with, okay? All right. I'm going to flip off of here and go back to the documents. Hopefully you guys got that. Let's go to document 3. Document 3 is a photograph by Julian Cochran. He is a photographer, or possibly she, employed by a United States company that distributed photos for educational books. It's a silk factory in central Japan, 1904. So what are some things that you can glean from this photograph? What's going on here? Maybe working conditions, possibly who's doing the work. Describe this photograph. Drop it in the comments. What are some things that you would say about this photograph? Yeah, good. So it's mostly women. I don't know that I see any men. Looks like all women. So it's a female labor force. Women working in factory-like atmosphere. It isn't very clear. Even on my screen, it's not very clear. Most likely on the AP test, it will be clearer for you. But this is what we're working with right now. So just do your best. Casey says, women working in factories. Where's the photograph? It's in the DBQ documents. Women working in the factories. I think it's probably my internet. Oh, you can't see the photo? That's weird. Let me try to reshare my screen. Maybe that's my problem. What about now? Can you see it now? If you can't see it, you can grab the DBQ documents from The Amazing Race. The link is on there. Okay, good. Glad you see it. Let's see. Awesome. So women working in the factories. What are the working conditions like? What does it look like? Do you have any ideas about the working conditions? Monotonous. Yeah, it kind of looks somewhat like an assembly line, maybe. Claustrophobic. Crowded but organized. Yeah, it doesn't look as bad as some of the other pictures we've seen, right? When we were looking at some of the other Industrial Revolution pictures of the cotton factories with all the moving parts, and it was really dangerous. This doesn't look too horrible. It doesn't look like someplace a lot of us would probably want to work, but it's not like, it doesn't look like it's bad working conditions. There's no space in between each of them. They seem to be doing the same thing. Okay, so for your description of this one, I'm going to put something about, like it shows the working conditions. The factory looks clean, right? I mean, the aisleways are clean. And it doesn't look too bad. Female workforce. Looks like one of those factories where they keep the sheep tied up. Well, this is a silk factory, so I don't think that they had any of the sheep around, but possible. What can we maybe argue with this one? Maybe something about the female workforce, perhaps? We'll see if we have any other. We could probably talk about working conditions. So I'm just going to leave these two here. I mean, that's kind of the same thing. What about point of view or audience? It's a United States photographer, and he's taking the photo for educational books. So you could probably do purpose, right? It's going into an educational book. Now, do you think that maybe since it's going into an educational book, do you think that that would affect the photo in any way? For example, do you think that the photo is going to be 100% accurate of what this factory actually looks like? Or do you think they might have staged it a little bit to make it look a little bit better? Yeah, they definitely want to make Japan look better, and it could be staged, right, Divya? Absolutely. So that could go in your purpose. You could say this is going to an educational book, and therefore it's a possibility that it is staged to make Japan look better. It could be for show. Yeah, absolutely. You guys are getting good. I like it. I like what's going on here. Can you see your improvement? Definitely, I'm seeing some improvement. So what's interesting about that, Friday, and that's what I was thinking at first too, that maybe it was to make a good impression on the Western world, but it doesn't say that, well, you could probably say that because it's going in educational books and it's a company owned by the United States. So it's probably going to be in the United States at some point. Kind of showing off Japan. Yeah. Making a good impression on the Western world, showing how awesome Japan is since they've industrialized. Hey, Melanie, welcome in. I don't think I said welcome to you when you first came in. Good to have you. All right, let's go on to the next one, document 4. This source is from a Russian socialist. These are his memoirs published in 1907, recalling his participation in the 1904-1905 strike for the Putlov factory in St. Petersburg. So we know he's a socialist. That's going to affect his point of view, right? Because that is a belief. I'm going to put point of view here, and then once we read it, maybe we'll be able to figure out his point of view. So it says, I remember the enormous impression which the first workers' meeting during the strike produced on me and my comrades. A kind of mystical religious ecstasy reigned the whole time of the meeting. Thousands of people stood side by side for hours in the dreadful heat on the factory floor and thirstily devoured the artless, strikingly powerful, simple, and passionate speeches of their exhausted fellow workers. The whole time, the content of the speeches was meager, the same phrases being repeated in many ways. Our patience has come to an end. Our suffering has gone beyond all measure. Better death than this life, and so forth. But they were all pronounced with such marvelous, touching sincerity, flowed so much from the very depths of their exhausted human soul, that the same phrase pronounced for the 100th time brought tears to the eyes and conveyed the certainty that it was really necessary to do something in order to give vent to this worker bitterness and dissatisfaction, which had overflowed its limits. So this is pretty powerful stuff, right? He's saying like this meeting brought people to tears because everyone was so exhausted. Their souls were exhausted by this work. So definitely we can do point of view on this. Let's start with describes first, though. How would you describe the main idea of this document? Just give me some tidbits. Doesn't necessarily have to be in full sentences, because when you're just taking notes on this, you're going to write down just little tidbits of how you would describe the main idea. Okay, so we got some coming in. Let's see. Divya says, describes the strike and how it affected workers by inspiring them even more by speaking with their true emotions and to fight what's right. Yes, that's awesome. So you're going to put that right here for describes. Let's see what else we have. Workers protest against the poor working conditions. Sure, that would work. I would maybe add, workers in Russia when you actually write it. So that's very specific. Contrast between the workforce in Japan versus Russia. Yeah, so the reaction's different, right? The reaction in Russia is a revolution or strikes. So you could possibly use that for something to argue that the working conditions led to strikes in Russia. That's a possibility. The fourth document describes a strike in Russia. It shows how involved the workers were in the strike. Yes, that would work. How horrible the working conditions were and how it impacted their lives. How it's going to kind of lead to the Russian Revolution. Widespread resistance in industrialization in Russia. Yeah, so this is definitely something that we could argue. The resistance to industrialization in Russia because of the poor working conditions. That would be good to put here as well. So that gives you some ideas of how to describe and support it. Now for point of view, remember you're saying who is the author, what does the author believe, and why does the author believe it? So take a minute to see if you can come up with that. Who is the author? What does the author believe? And why does the author believe it? What would be the point of view for this document? Let me grab a pen so I can write down who's here for extra credit purposes later. While you guys are working on the point of view. And then when you have your point of view, go ahead and drop it in the comments. Don't forget, who is the author? What does the author believe? Why does the author believe it? That's what you're doing. And T, when you get a chance, remind me your real name so that I can make sure you get extra credit. All right, let's see what we got. Devious says he is a socialist who believes that the strike was the right thing to do, and it highly affects his view on the industrialization. So instead of saying it, say his beliefs in socialism. Okay, make it very clear that his beliefs in socialism is what's affecting his point of view. Okay, I can read into that, but I don't know that the reader would be able to. So make sure that you're just really clear with that. But that's really good. Tobena says the author is Samov, who believes that the strike inspired the Russian workers to stand up against the poor working conditions. And then add to that, he believes this because he is socialist. That's what's affecting his point of view, okay? That's the part of point of view that they're going to be looking for. So just make sure and add that part. Author depicts that Russians fought for the revolution to bring rights for the peasants, okay? So this isn't going to be quite the revolution yet. It's going to be a part of the revolution, right? But right now they're calling them to strike first before the revolution. I don't think he says revolution in here, but maybe. Doesn't really talk about that yet. But if you're going to say that, that could work as long as you say he's believing this because he's a socialist. Those socialist beliefs are what impact his point of view, okay? He believes this because he participated during the strike because he's a socialist. You have to have that in there, Tobena. Remember, point of view is what is affecting your beliefs from the outside, okay? Yes, he believes in strike, and yes, he believes there are poor working conditions and that he wants the Russian workers to stand up. but he believes this because he is a socialist. That's what's guiding his thoughts, okay? Socialist is going to kind of be similar to like if somebody is a certain religion, that's going to guide their thoughts. Or if somebody is rich or poor, you're going to think differently about things if you're rich versus if you're poor, okay? So make sure you add that in there. Megan says the author is a socialist. He believes that the workers should rise up against the bourgeoisie. Oh, a fancy word. I like it. He believes this because he is overworked and doesn't feel like he gets the respect or authority he deserves. Sure. Now, you could even make it stronger and explain what socialist means. Why does being a socialist affect those beliefs? Well, socialism is like halfway in between democracy and communist, right? It's where the government owns a little bit and the government kind of takes care of its people. And so if you add that in there, then that would for sure make that even stronger. You could say something like, I would start with this part, Megan, that he believes that the workers should rise up against bourgeoisie. And then at the end say he believes this because he's a socialist, and being a socialist makes him think that the government should take care of the people more and give the people more rights or something like that. But that's really good. Author is a socialist. He believes the workers should stand up against the poor working conditions. Yes. Make sure and say, because of this, he believes that the workers should stand up against the poor working conditions. Make sure and connect the socialist part to what he believes. Okay. Point of view of this document is from a Russian socialist who would likely advocate for this labor strike due to the fact that he and other laborers are being overworked and they're sick and tired of the endless, monotonous labor. That could work. I would maybe just add he's inspired by his beliefs of socialism or something like that. Just make that connection between being a socialist and his beliefs a little stronger. But I think that would work. Puri says the author is a Russian socialist who believes that the workers should unify to protest against the working conditions. He believes this because of his socialist beliefs and the right to protest. Yes, that's a good tie-in with the fact that he believes this because he's socialist. Being socialist makes him believe that they have the right to protest. And yes, Sophia, we are sourcing right now. It's also called explains on your rubric. So in the notes, when you're taking notes on your documents and you're going through them for the first time, you can write down, hey, this one, he's socialist, so I'm going to do point of view, and I'm going to talk about how his opinion is affected by the fact that he's socialist. And then you would write down what's a description. We talked about the description being the right to strike against poor working conditions. And then when we're looking at supports, what would we argue with this document? We could argue that in Russia, their response to industrialization was striking. Okay, so this would be like your supports, this would be describes, and this would be explains or sourcing. All right, let's go on to document 5. You guys are doing good. I can see some improvement here. This is good. All right, this is from a Japanese historian. It's interviews with elderly Japanese women who had worked in silk factories in Eastern Japan in the early 1900s. It's published in 1968. Now, if you look at this, it talks about the food. So most of them are saying it's pretty good food. The nature of the work, they're saying it's about average. Pay is good. Treatment of the sick workers is average. And asked if they were glad they had gone to work in the factory. Most of them were glad. So this kind of supports good working conditions, right? It also is interviews with Japanese women. So it would also support if you want to talk about the workers being female. So it kind of just depends on how we want to group these, right? So over here on your organizer, you're going to say this is a data, like if we're going to, let's describe it first. The description of this would be data from interviews of Japanese workers, female workers. The description overall isn't too bad. And then this could support females working in the factories. We could also maybe put it with that picture showing that the working conditions weren't too bad. Sophia says if we're going to source this one, she would do historical context. So that's good. Let's check that out. This document reflects the historical context, urbanization of Japan in the late Meiji Restoration, reflecting urbanization and better acceptance of females in the workplace. That could work for historical context. So this is in the 1900s. We know that they're moving in from the villages, which would be the urbanization she's talking about. Now, how does that affect the document, do you think? So oftentimes you want to bring the sourcing back to talk about like something in relation to the document. So you could say like this document, not documents, that's kind of weird. This information documents the women who urbanized or something like that, so that you tie this explanation to the document. Akash says this survey demonstrates the Japanese workers' feelings towards aspects of how the factories treated them, such as food, treatment, difficulty of work. That would be a great description. So that would work really well for description. The other thing that I want you to notice, since it is a silk factory instead of homemade silk, I'm not sure what you're asking, Sophia. Let me know. You have to explain that one a little bit more. The other thing I want to point out is that these women worked in the factories in the early 1900s, but it's not published until 1968. What could potentially be the problem with that? Divya is going to try her hand at point of view. She says, Japanese historian meaning no bias for Western views. Also women who had worked in the factories personally. Okay, so with point of view, though, you have to do it based on the Japanese historian's point of view, right? So what does he believe and why does he believe it? Yes, he is a historian, so he shouldn't have bias, right? But can you prove that from the document? Can you prove that he doesn't have bias? I think that might be kind of difficult. Now, you could do the women's point of view. Their point of view is the firsthand point of view, right? And they're talking about their experiences. But the problem might be that because it's published 50 years later, well, around like 50 years later, could they maybe have forgotten exactly how it went down? Could it be that it might not be completely accurate? No problem, Divya. You brought up some really good points to talk about, so I'm glad you guys are throwing this stuff out there. Oh, okay, I see, Sophia. When I asked how it fits into urbanization related to the document, yeah, you could say that it's a switch from making silk at home to going into the silk factories. Yeah, that could work. So maybe for this one, you could do purpose, and you could say that the historical context one definitely would work that Sophia brought up. But if you want to address the fact that it's published so much later, you could say something like the purpose was to preserve the memories of these women. However, because it's published over 50 years later, there's a possibility that it might not be as accurate as what it would have been if they would have been interviewed sooner or something like that. When you source the documents, you want to make sure and connect them in some way to what's going on in the document. So I'm going to put historical context as a possibility, as well as purpose. Remember, you only have to do this 3 times, but I say do it 4 times because you want to have an extra. So we have quite a few in there that already that, where did my other documents go? Oh, I didn't put enough document. Oh, okay. So you just add another document because that's been for last year when we only had 5 documents. Yeah, Sophia, it could also depend on what you're going to argue with that document. Sure. Usually, though, like the historical context and purpose and things like that, those are kind of separate from your argument, so you can kind of choose whichever ones you want. That's awesome, Fardine. If you can do it 5 times, do it 5 times. You know, the more the better because you always want to have some extra. All right, document 6 is by a Russian merchant, Pavel, and this is from his published memoirs written between 1911 and 1914. The final 10 years of the last century and the first years of the present were characterized by the extraordinary growth of industry in Russia. Mining and metallurgical industries, that would be metal, sorry, I can't speak, such as ironworks, sugar production, and textile, especially cotton, prospered greatly. The growth of Russian industry was furthered by both Russia's immense natural resources and by a series of necessary government measures promulgated, I can't say that word, during Sergei Witt's administration of the Russian finances. For example, the monetary reform or the protective tariff policy, which had existed in Russia from the early 1800s. The general atmosphere that prevailed among Russian businesses and government circles who's also stimulated this growth. The slogan of the day was the development of Russia's protective forces, the building of its own industry, the organization of Russia's own production to utilize the country's enormously rich productive capacities. Qualitative improvement of factories, equipment went along with the quantitative growth. Many of the textile mills in Russia, especially in Moscow, were among the best equipped in the world. So this one's going to come a little bit after that first one we read, but it's still talking about the success of industrialization and how Russia was kind of pushed forward by the government. The government is supporting this industrialization, okay? So for what you could argue with this one is definitely the fact that the government is supporting industrialization and that it's going very well. So let's see, supports. You could use this to argue the government support and group it with documents 1 and 2. Yeah, absolutely. So when you see that, maybe make yourself a note of the fact that you could group this with 1 and 2. That way you don't forget. And then describes could simply just be, you could pull stuff that talks about the specifics of how successful it was. Like for the simple fact, let's see, Russia was using its industry to, build the textile industry and mining and use all of the resources that it had at its disposal. Industrialize. Okay. Can't spell tonight either. Can't talk, can't spell. It's just been a long week, y'all. You guys have all been chilling at home. Better be doing your work at home. All right. For this one might be kind of hard to source. You could probably do the fact that it's his memoirs, and so he's like trying to share this with possibly the Russian people. But then you have to tie it in with how it affects the document. So that might be kind of difficult. Let's see what Sophia says for point of view. Maybe his point of view as a Russian merchant could mean, oh, that's true. He is a merchant. I missed that. Could mean he exaggerates how well the Russian economy was and its wealth was going back in his day to make his legacy and country look better. That's a possibility. You could also say, though, that because he was a merchant, he has experience with some of these industries, and maybe that's giving him his information. But then possibly you could say that he is exaggerating, because some of this does kind of sound exaggerating, right? Like he's making it sound really, really good. So yeah, that's a possibility. At this point, we have enough to source, though. So if you don't have time, you wouldn't necessarily have to do this one. All right, let's look at our last document. This source is coming from a Russian physician, and it's an excerpt from her article. All right, go ladies. Published in the magazine of International Women's Suffrage Organization in 1914. Okay, so Women's Suffrage Organization in 1914, we could historical context that one, and we could talk about the fact that women were fighting for their right to vote during this time. So that's probably going to affect the writing of this document. Megan's got another point of view for our document 6. Let's check it out. He is a merchant. He benefited from the reform in government policy, so that is why he believes that government policies are justified. That wouldn't be bad, yeah. Because he is definitely supportive of the policies, right? You can tell that by what he's talking about here, that he's supportive of the policies. So yeah, that would be great. All right, let's look at what she's got to say. She says, in the majority of the factories where women are employed, the working day is from 10 to 11 and a half hours. Okay, so women working in the factory, that could maybe be similar with our Japan, what's going on over there. On Saturdays in many factories, the work sometimes lasts 18 hours per day. The workers are forced to work overtime on pain of instant dismissal or a transference to inferior employment. And in the case of children, actual physical force is used to make them continue in their places. It happened sometimes on April 25th, 1913, at a cotton spinning factory in St. Petersburg, that the workers strike as a protest against the dismissal of old workers and their replacement by girls between 14 and 16 years of age. The result of the strike was a wholesome dismissal of all the women whose places were filled by young girls. In a large tobacco factory in St. Petersburg, the women workers who were asking for raised pay were cynically informed that they could augment their income by prostitution. So not good working conditions, right? We're on document number 7 now, so I'm going to add that here. Document number 7, we could definitely argue female workers, not good working conditions. And it also talked about strikes. We had that in another document, so possibly something along those lines. And then Divya has our describes for us terrible working conditions and treatments, a treatment of working women in Russia that they had to face. Yeah, that'd be great for describes. So you can possibly write that one. And we said that we could do historical context. And yes, Samang, you are right. We could do point of view as well, because this is a woman talking about other women. So her point of view is definitely different than if a man were writing that, right? It shows how Russian women were suppressed when they protested against the unfair working conditions. That's something you could argue. Absolutely. Women were exposed to horrible working conditions. That's a good description. Since she is a woman that worked in the female factories, yes, absolutely. And not only a woman who works there, but she's a doctor. So she's probably seeing, their injuries firsthand. Would you suggest grouping them in 3 groups or 2 groups? So Megan, that's a good question. It just really depends on the documents. Most of the time it's easier to group them into 3 groups. Most of the time it's easier to group them into 3 groups because sometimes you just don't have very many that can go together. In this case, though, several of the documents kind of go together. So it could be that you'd write in 2 groups. But what I suggest, if you have time, which you should have time because you have a whole hour for the DBQ, what I would suggest is doing 3 groups so that you can have 2 similarities and 1 difference or 2 differences and 1 similarity. That way, if one isn't very good, they'll give you points for the other argument. Smong says, okay, I already read that one. Let's see. Sophia says, definitely a firsthand account rather than anything from gathered data like the Japan one. Yes. This one specifically, Megan, I grouped it into 3 groups. But I want to know what you guys would do. And then I'll talk to you about what I decided to do. So take a minute, look back over your notes on these documents and what you're going to argue with each one of the documents, and drop in the chat how you think you would group them with your argument. So remember, we're looking for similarities and differences in industrialization. How could we group these? You can do 1 group at a time if you want. So Coffee Chinchilla says maybe we could do 3, 5, and 7 because they show the difference between women's working conditions. Okay. That would be a similarity, right? So you're going to want to remember that. That's a similarity. Any other groups? Bardine agrees. Yes, I agree with that one. That's actually one that I had. What would our other groups be? Government simulated industrialization. That's a similarity. Documents 1, 2, and 6. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to put these down here. Groups. We have a similarity of mostly female workforce and working conditions. Or working conditions. And then we also have a similarity of government stimulated industrialization. And that would be 1, 2, and 6. So deviate, you could argue that as well. The difference in working conditions in that in Japan, it was a little bit better because remember, we do have that one document. This one didn't make it sound very bad, right? But could this data be skewed? Do you think that they necessarily wanted to put it out there if it was really bad? I don't know. Also, could this be skewed? That could probably be staged, right? So you could probably say that it is a difference. You could probably show. Oh, I think I might have read yours wrong, Tarashri, because Tarashri was saying it was a difference too. So yeah, you might want to go with difference. You could probably go with either one, though. You could probably prove that it's a similarity that neither one of them had very good working conditions, but difference would probably be easier. So I'm going to say the difference is working conditions. Because in both places, it was mostly female, right? Then You had documents 3, 4, 5, and 7. Coffee Chinchilla says 3, 5, and 7. What was 4? Okay, this one was about the strikes. So this one I would probably put with the strikes, Divya, instead of using it with this. It would work with that one too, but for time's sake, you don't have to prove it with so many documents. If you can prove it with these 3 documents, then that's enough. And then we need one more similarity or difference. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, sorry, Megan, I read that wrong. You're right, it is a difference. Tarashri says, can we differentiate between the working conditions for the women? In Russia, it wasn't shown as good, while in Japan, it's pretty good. You could make that a difference, like what I was saying, Tarashri. It just depends on how you want to argue it. If you want to say that the documents show that it wasn't as bad in Japan, then you can, or you can say that because the documents could possibly be skewed, that maybe it was a little bit worse than what they were letting on, and it would be a similarity. You could argue it either way. Or how about Japan tried to hide the bad conditions, but Russia did not? That's a possibility, Divya, but it would be hard to say that Russia didn't try to hide it because, like, is Russia, like, publicizing it to the rest of the world? Not really. So that one might be kind of hard to argue. You could do difference in reaction. Ooh, here we go. Okay, so there could be another difference, right? The difference in reaction, Japanese women were pretty happy, but the Russians went on strike. Not necessarily just the women, right? It could be workers in general. So you could say the reactions to bad working conditions due to industrialization led to different outcomes. And that could be 4, 5, and 7. I also put 3. Okay. I also put 3 with it, but you're already using 3 in another spot, so you wouldn't necessarily have to. So we could say difference is that the reactions to bad working conditions due to industrialization were different. In Japan, they put up with it. In Russia, they organized strikes. And that would be documents 4, 7, 3, and 5. But once again, we've already used documents 7 and 5, so you don't, and 3. So the one where we definitely have to use is 4, and then you can just kind of pick and choose which other ones you want. Okay, Tobena says, difference between the Russian and Japanese actions in response to the pork. Yes, absolutely. Yes, it is B-Day tomorrow. Fardine, it's B-Day. Okay, so these are your 3 groups. If these are the 3 groups that you're going to go with, write your thesis and drop it in the chat. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to do that. Write your thesis and drop it in the chat. How did my groups get up there? I don't know. No star tomorrow. It's over. Hey, Tu, I didn't know you were here. I'll get you down on my extra credit list. You don't want to miss out on that. The prompt is, to what extent was industrialization in Japan and Russia similar and different between the years of 1850 to 1914? Let me see if I've got that written anywhere. Let me write it for you down here. Yes, this is a past exam question, but it was so old, Sophia, that we had to rewrite the prompt because it was written like how they used to write it. But it's pretty easy to do that. Let's see. Does using the same document in different arguments count? You can use it in different arguments. And what's great about that, Runtian, is let's say that you don't use it the right way the first time, then you'd still get points the second time. So, like, let's say that the first time you describe it really well, but you don't really support your argument. But the second time you describe it and you support your argument, then you get the points for that document. But it wouldn't count twice. So, like, let's say that you describe and support really well with the same document twice. It doesn't count for double. It just kind of gives you some backup in case you need it. All right, let's check out some of these theses. Theses? Guess that's the right proper term. Okay, so between the years of 1850 to 1914, both Japan and Russia significantly supported industrialization, but they had different working conditions and different responses to them. That's not too bad. The only thing is make sure that you have your extent language in there for your differences. Significantly would work for the supporting industrialization, but how were the working conditions different? How were the responses to them different? So you could maybe say, but they had dramatically different working conditions and extremely different responses to them, or something like that. All right, make sure that you have extent language for all three of them, but that's good job. Coffee Chinchilla says the industrialization in Russia and Japan were similar in the manner that they both were highly stimulated by the government, while I think it got cut off, Coffee. You might want to try typing that one again. Casey says industrialization between Russia and Japan were similar in the way that both governments stimulated industrialization. They differed in the way working conditions and the reactions of the working conditions. Not bad, but make sure you have that extent language in there. To what extent did these things happen? That's what you're looking for. The extent to which industrialization in Japan and Russia was similar and different was that both governments supported and added to the industrialization. However, working conditions and reactions to these working conditions were different. Okay, so this one's not too bad, Divya. The problem is I don't think that they would count when you say the extent to which, because you're not really like using that extent language. So you could just take that out and just start with industrialization and say industrialization in Japan and Russia was similar and different between 1850 and 1914, whereas they were was that both governments supported and added to industrialization. You need some kind of extent word there. So both governments highly supported and added to industrialization. However, the extremely poor working conditions and the intense reactions to these conditions were different, something like that. You want to put your extent language before each one of your topics. Megan says, though both Russia and Japan relied on the government for industrialization, the working conditions and workers' reactions were drastically different and greatly affected the role of industrialization. That's good. Though both, yeah, I think that would work. That sounds good. One major similarity between the industrialization of Japan and Russia is that both countries stimulated industrialization. Not bad. Make sure that you have some kind of extent word, like they greatly stimulated it or they highly supported it, something like that. One major difference between industrialization is that Russian workers faced much worse working conditions, and to a lesser degree, one minor difference between Russia and Japan is how strike within the countries was organized. Okay. Industrialization in Japan and Russia had two differences and one similar. The two differences were that the working conditions impacted the society. Some citizens went on strike. Not bad. Just make sure that you have like how bad it was, right? And one similarity was how the government stimulated the industrialization. So don't forget that extent language. You're so welcome, Divya, no problem. Okay, so once you have your thesis, then you're going to write a paragraph on each one of these groups. Now, let's say that you're writing this and you get 2 paragraphs done, you have a difference and a similarity, it's really well fleshed out, you have your thesis, you've got your point of view, you got your sourcing and all that stuff, and you're down to like 10 minutes. Instead of writing that 3rd paragraph, because you only have 10 minutes and you might not be able to get that 3rd paragraph completely done in 10 minutes and write your outside evidence. What I would suggest is to write your outside evidence, because that outside evidence, if it's done well, is worth 1 whole point. Whereas if you already have these 2 paragraphs, let's say you have these 2 paragraphs finished, that means you have 6 documents. And if you've described and supported them, then that's 2 points. If you've done your point of view and all of that, that's 3 points. So you don't even necessarily need to waste your time on that, because this would be extra. If you have 20 minutes and you have time to do this one, then yes, do it, because then you'll have extra. But if not, make sure that you get that outside evidence put in there, okay? Especially if you're running out of time, because that's pretty easy to get. That's just going to be anything outside the documents that you can connect with this. So for example, you could talk about how this industrialization is, changing the class structure, and it's pushing towards the Russian Revolution. So Fardeen, you were talking about Russian Revolution this whole time. You can talk about how like these strikes lead up to the Bolsheviks coming in and saying, hey, you need to go on strike. You need to push against the Tsar. Look at this bad treatment. And then you can talk about how World War I has some influence on that as well, and that people finally get tired of how the Tsar is handling things, and they start the Russian Revolution. Okay, that could be your outside evidence. It has to tie into the prompt, so make sure you're doing that. But if you do that and you write that paragraph, that's a whole point. So don't forget it. A lot of the essays that I read last year didn't even try to do the outside evidence. It's an easy point to get. Also, don't forget context. What's the context of industrialization? How does it even get into Japan? How does it even get into Russia? That would be talking about how it's going to spread from Great Britain and going to start going into other European countries. And then you could talk about how Japan allowed the outsiders to come in and start the Meiji Restoration because they didn't want what happened to them, or they didn't want what happened to China to happen to them. Because remember with the Opium Wars and all of that? So that could be in context, okay? Context and outside evidence are 2 points for basically 2 paragraphs. This part right here, since it's just your extra, only write that if you have time. Okay, let's see what questions we got. Divya says, would Japan learning from China to support industrialization rather than reject it count as outside evidence? Yes, as long as you don't use that in your context, you could use that as outside evidence. Just remember, you can't double dip. Let's see. Harshdeep says, while industrialization in Japan and Russia was similar to a large extent in that both countries made efforts to stimulate the economy, it also differed in a large extent to that workers in industrial Russia were subject to far harsher working conditions, and the prevalence of organized strikes were greater within Russia. That's good compared to Japan. Yep. I like that thesis. Fardeen says, where do you put the outside evidence? Well, you can put it wherever you want. I would suggest that when you put it in there, that you use those words and you say some outside evidence that supports my argument is, or some outside evidence that goes along with my argument is. That way the reader doesn't miss it. And the reader knows exactly that that's what you're going for, okay? Outside evidence, yes, I'm pretty sure that it needs to be within the time period because it has to link to your prompt. So it doesn't really make sense to take it outside of the time period. So yeah, Keep it in the time period. I don't know that College Board has ever specifically said that, but I've never given the outside evidence point for something that's outside the time period, because normally that doesn't connect very well. And the context, yes, context I would put right before your thesis, because remember, you have to link the context to your thesis. So if you write the context, then you can have some kind of transition sentence that says, all of this led into industrialization in Russia and Japan, and then you can start your thesis. So it'll just flow really nicely. Then once you write your thesis, you're going to do your paragraphs, your outside evidence, and if you want to, if you have time at the very end, you can reword your thesis, because they'll count your thesis either in the first paragraph or the last paragraph. So let's say that you're not sure if your thesis is super strong. You can reword it in the last paragraph and hopefully get that point. Okay, so what we're going to do, if you would like to write this out, this DBQ, you can. You don't have to. I will give you credit for just your notes from tonight's live on your assignment if you're in my class. But if you want to write it out and send it to me, if you're in my class, you can send it to me on Teams. If you're not, and you're listening from another class, then you can send it to my email address right there, and I will check it and score it for you, okay? Like I said, if you're in my class, you don't have to write it unless you want the practice. If you want the practice, go ahead, sit down, time yourself. Give yourself 40 minutes. That would give you 20 minutes to do the document. So give yourself about 40 minutes. See if you can write it down from what we have planned so far, and then you can send it to me either on Teams or in my email, okay? And we have one more live next week on Thursday at 7 p.m. to go over Unit 9. We'll be doing a DBQ and maybe practice some SAQs as well. Maybe we'll just do like a shorter DBQ or something. And then on Tuesday of the following week, that would be Tuesday the 18th, I believe. Let me look. Tuesday the 18th, we'll be doing some games on YouTube. And then the 20th is the big day, people. 20th is the big day. We have our exam on May 20th. Are you taking yours on the 10th, Sophia? Let me know. If you are, we wish you the best of luck. I'm sure you'll do awesome. Divya says, so if we took physical notes, we send them to you on Teams. So Divya, what you're going to do with physical notes, take a picture of it and put it in your assignment right here. You can just put the picture right here as proof that you did that, okay? And then if you want me to grade, like if you want to write this DBQ out to practice, you can send that to me on Teams. Tabena says, so what are we going to do after May 20th? Just relax? No, we're still going to be learning stuff, but it will definitely be more fun. I promise you that. I've got a couple of cool things. There's a virtual tour that we're going to be taking for the Asian Museum, a couple other things that I'm working on, so we'll see. Sophia takes it Monday. Wow, Sophia, good luck. I hope that you just rock this exam. I think you can. We wish you the best of luck. Just know that your friends from Houston will be rooting for you, okay? Hopefully it goes well. Everybody wish Sophia luck. She takes it on the 10th, Monday. Is it Monday? Yeah, that's the 10th, I think is when, yeah. Yeah, we decided to go with the 20th, but man, the 10th is coming up. So you're going to be studying all weekend, huh, Sophia? That's awesome. I know you'll do a great job. Arnav says, just joining. That's no problem, Arnav. As soon as this posts, you can go back and look at all the stuff that the kiddos contributed, and you can test your knowledge. There you go. See, Sophia, you got all of us behind you. We're all wishing you good luck. Campaigning for coloring sheets after the 20th. I don't know, Casey. We'll see. We might do some coloring sheets. We are lucky. I had my AP World class in the first semester. Oh, no, Sophia. Yes, definitely study this weekend. You can do it. You can do it. We believe in you. All right. Everybody says good luck. Good luck. All right, Sophia, well, keep us posted. Let us know how it goes. And if you want to join us for our game day, you can join and just have fun knowing that you're already done. All right, guys, I'm going to let you go for tonight. Have a great evening. And if I don't see you tomorrow in class, have an awesome weekend. Keep studying, stay up with this amazing race, and it will pay off. And Sophia, go get that exam on Monday. AP World coloring sheets would be cool. Ooh, AP World themed ones. That might be an idea. That might be an idea. All right, good night. Thanks, everybody, for joining. I will see you later. Bye.